Hi, I'm Mary, a librarian and book reviewer with a focus on stories written for kids, tweens, and teens. Today, I am joined by Mel Rosenberg, who hand wrote his first children's book when he was 23 years old. After several years in which Mel pursued careers as a scientist, inventor, and later a jazz musician and singer, he has returned his attention to writing for children. Hi, Mel. Great to see you.
Hi, Mary. It's great to see you too.
I'm excited to talk about your new book, Emily Saw a Door. Can you tell us about it, please?
Yes, am I allowed to show it?
Yes, please.
Here it
There
is,
it is.
illustrated by the fabulous Orit Magdia.
And what's the story about?
Okay, the story is about a girl named Emily who goes from door to door and requests to be allowed in. She wants to belong somewhere. She wants to find her place. But there's a different story with every door. Either she's summarily rejected for not being blue enough, not being tall enough, not speaking softly enough. And there are also doors that are willing to allow her in, but doors that Emily realizes that aren't for her. In the end, after walking through the valley of the doors, she sees a chalk game and gets an idea. Shall I continue and give it all away?
No, let's leave it there and have it be a
Okay.
surprise for readers. Yeah, so what was the inspiration for this book? Where did it come from?
Well, I think that authors write to their own inner child, whether they admit it or not. I admit it freely. So I write to my 5-year-old, to my kindergarten Melvin at the Charles Hulse Kindergarten in Ottawa, Canada, who spent a miserable year in kindergarten. And I write to him that it's okay to be chubby. It's okay to be Jewish in a school where you have to pray to Jesus. It's okay to be left-handed in a school where they force you to write with your right hand. So this was, if you want the story to my 5-year-old Melvin, that it is okay, and um, eventually you find your own doors and your own ways into the world and ways to belong. And also, we write to our adult selves. In this case, after several hundred rejections, trying to break in as an author at the age of almost 70, never having a traditionally published book, I think that some of that frustration went into this manuscript. So, ironically enough, Emily Saw a Door also opened my door as a traditionally published author.
Wow, metaphors from multiple angles, I feel like. That's excellent. How long did it take you? You said it was 700 submissions, or was that an exaggeration before it
No, that
got
was an
selected?
exaggeration. I no, Emily was rejected. I don't know, 30 or 40 times, but in various iterations. It improved. It took me about 5 years to write before it was picked up, and then it went through additional edits with the editor of the publishing house here, Yotam Schwimmer, to put it into the form where everybody can read it. The original book was published in Hebrew, but I wrote it in English, so it kind of played ping pong between the two languages.
Oh,
So it
interesting.
was, yeah, so it was about 7 years. No, it was 6 years from the start when I started writing it until its publication in Hebrew, and another 3 years until its publication in English.
Wow.
So that was the history.
How much did it change between the first iteration and the final one?
Okay, it changed. Well, I had the original idea of this girl mysteriously walking from door to door, knocking on doors and saying, hi, knock, knock, knock. It's Emily. What a beautiful door. May I come in? And, being either rejected or dejected, time after time after time. The uh, the ending, which I'm not going to divulge here, um, came later, and there was a beat in the middle when she walks through the valley of doors, where she sees this chalk game gets an idea, that also came later. And these were at the behest of two wonderful editors. I'm a huge fan of the editorial process.
It's important. Sometimes it's hard to hear all that feedback, but at the end, your result ends up being better.
Well, okay, but I did have a long career as a scientist and as an editor of scientific journals. And as a scientist, your papers get rejected too. You write a scientific manuscript, you send it in. It often gets rejected. You get angry for a couple of days, and you curse the world, and then you say, "Oh, maybe that person is right about that experiment. I can do it over again, fix a few things." Um, so I had this experience of being angry and then cooling off and rewriting and fixing over my 30-year career as a scientist and editor. So yeah, you do get really upset every time you're rejected, but it's an opportunity to go back and improve your writing.
Which do you think is more difficult, doing scientific writing or writing picture books?
Writing picture books is much more difficult.
Why do you say that?
Well, in so many ways. Statistically, if you're a scientist and you do your PhD, you'll get a job. Maybe not in academia. Maybe you don't want to be in academia. You'll get a job, and if you write scientific papers and they're not accepted to Science or Nature, there's a lot of other journals that will publish them, and papers might get rejected a couple of times, and you will find a publisher. And I had a very nice scientific career, published over 100 articles. But when it comes to writing a picture book, Mary, you're competing with thousands of other manuscripts for one slot. And in a really good picture book, there are so many criteria that you have to fulfill. It's a miracle when you write a manuscript that's worthy of publication. So much harder, much harder. In a picture book, you want to get all the raisins into the cake, right? You want to start off very quickly. You have less than 500 words. You have about 13 page spreads. Emily has more, but 13 is about the average. Page turns. You want to have page turns so that there's suspense every time you turn the page. What's going to happen? You have to have a story. And I like when a story comes around and comes back to the beginning. And then, of course, kids love humor and they love irony. Um, there's so many things that go into a good story.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you. When you have to put so much into so few words, it really forces you to be specific about all of the words that you use and how they're designed. And yeah, it's good. It's good to have that skill set from writing scientific papers and from having them be rejected before moving into picture books.
So I'm going to add one more thing. Okay,
Yeah.
as authors of picture books, we are really kind of putting up a framework, throwing a ball into the air. The other side of the picture, the other side of the picture book is the person who creates the pictures, the illustrator. And oftentimes, you asked me, um, in a publishing house, a traditional publishing house, they decide who's going to illustrate the book, and they don't ask you too much along the way. I mean, they ask you, let's say, questions of I don't know, is the story actually Paris in France or Paris in the States? Did you really mean an elephant here or a mastodon? But you really don't get to say in what Emily looks like, what the doors look like, how the book is laid out. These are questions for the art editor and the illustrator and the editor, and you don't get much say. So what you have to do is you're creating a framework where you want the artist to feel that this is also his or her or their book.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it doesn't come out to be a genuine full collaboration. So you have to get your whole story in 500 words, but then leave a ton of space for the icing.
That's right. For the story that's happening in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like that description where you each have your own story that's being told through this book, and having that be a collaboration. That's really nice. Are there any specific doors that speak to your 5-year-old self more than the others?
Oy vey. There's the let's see. There's the door where Emily isn't blue enough. That goes back to the joke, that's funny, you don't look Jewish. That's the rejection that little Melvin felt being Jewish. In the story, it's transformed into being bluish. And then there's the door for liars. Um, and I especially love that line where she asks him, "What's 2 plus 2?" And the voice behind the door answers 11. Um, because that's that's a little Easter egg that I laid there. If a Jewish writer can lay an Easter egg, there's an Easter egg there in that. And then, of course, there's the door that has stairs that never end. And Emily says, "Well, I really do need to talk." And sometimes, Mary, when I was writing this story, it was like Emily was telling me what to say.
Hmm.
So this is something that she told me. She said, "I really do need to talk." So she, of course, does not go for that door. And then there's the door for lions and tigers and crocodiles, where Emily realizes that she's going to be welcome because she's their lunch. And the voice behind the door says, "Oh, you're leaving. The animals will be so disappointed." There's these Emily lines. Then there's the door that she can't enter because she's not tall enough, and then there's the door she can't enter because she doesn't speak softly enough. Um, I like that door too. Um, it would be hard for me to pick my favorite door. I know you're going to ask me. Um, my favorite door is probably the jungle door because it required a certain amount of bravery on my part to keep that story in the book because it's a little bit of a frightening, to encounter a door, and like Marita's drawn it fabulously because we never see in the book. She's such a brilliant illustrator. We never see what's going on behind the door. We only see it from Emily's point of view. So here, if you can see, this is the jungle door, and wow. So there's the word temerity. Is that a word in English? So I'm proud that I had the courage to keep that door in the story.
Yes. Well, there's something to be said about having a little bit of that spook factor for kids where they're definitely safe, but they feel a little bit uneasy.
Absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Were there any
Um,
doors that you wanted to put in that didn't make it?
yeah, that nobody asked me that question. That's a really good question. There were 5 doors, and then there were 7 doors, and one door didn't make the cut. And that door was the door for those who have been there before. And Emily, and the voice behind the door says, "Sure, come in. What's the password?" And Emily says, "Well, I don't know. It's my first time being here." And the voice says, "Well, I'm sorry. This is the door for those who've been here before." Of course, Emily realizes that's an impossibility. Um, I love that door, Mary. Very sorry it didn't make the cut, but I thought maybe, and my editor, that it was a little bit too advanced um, for the age that we intended the book to aim towards.
That makes sense. But a really interesting concept on its own. Maybe for when you write your picture book for grown-ups. You can use that one.
That's your next question, isn't it? I think that all picture books are for grown-ups. They're written for kids. So yeah, I'm going to fix that. The books have to be primarily for the kids. They have to amuse the kids. Uh, they have to um, they have to aim towards the audience of the most important readers, which are children. But they also have to be fun and interesting for the adults, the librarians who are reading them, the parents, the grandparents. Um, So they have to work on multiple levels. And one of the things that's really interesting is that picture books are meant to be read aloud. So whoever is doing the reading, whether it's you in the library or me with my children or grandchildren, it turns us into thespians. It turns us into actors. And I think a good picture book enables us to tell the story without being actors.
Mm.
And you've talked about this, and people have written about it. The kids love, things repeat themselves, and they love silly words and they love silly things. When you write a book that is easy for the parent or librarian to read, and to convey the heart of the story to children, it works a lot better. If I have to be a professional actor to get the kids interested in the story, yikes.
That certainly makes it more challenging. I agree. So I'm wondering, you have a lot of these big ideas that are behind the doors in the book. What is it that you hope or think that young readers are going to get out of this, whether it's just a really fun story or if you think they might come away with something more?
Okay, so that is a really excellent question, and it deserves a really excellent answer. But I'm just going to give you my answer. I think the best way to write your book is just to write the bloody story, um, not to fret on the message, whether it's didactic or not. Kids prefer a fun story, and every story is going to have a lesson or multiple lessons. And you don't want to bang the book into the heads of the kids. It's important to wash your hands. There's bacteria on you. No, I don't. I really don't believe in that. And somebody wrote that Emily Sador is didactic. And I was a little bit insulted. I mean, of course, there's messages and lessons, but I just wanted to write a really good story for kids about rejection and acceptance and belonging. Um, but when you're a teacher, as I've been for I don't know 60 years, well, something's gonna come out in the wash, right?
Mhm.
Um, so the interesting thing is that when the book came out and people started to write book reviews, I noticed that they all had different. The critics had different ways to look at my doors, and I'm thinking to myself, somebody would write, "Oh, the door with the endless stairs is the door of hopeless capitalism," and I'm thinking to myself, "What? What? That I wrote that? No, I didn't mean that." So of course there's something in writing called a reader response, right? And one of the great things I think about children's books, if they're written well, is that kids and adults get to make their own interpretations of what I wrote. And I bridled at the beginning. I almost phoned up the critic and say, what are you thinking? You didn't understand my book. And then I said to myself, oh, yeah, he did understand my book, but he understood it in his way.
Mhm.
So when people understand my book in a different manner than the manner I think in which I intended or wrote it, I should be a very happy author.
The way that you're talking about that makes me think of high school English classes where you're given a book and told to come up with the right answer of what the book's about. And inevitably, I know I was one who was finding that my answers were wrong always. And then I said, well, how do we even know? How do we know what the author was thinking? So I love that you had that surprise from someone who read your book and saw something that you didn't expect in there. And that's a challenge and a benefit of having only 500 words is that people are going to fill in the blanks with other things.
Well, more and more people are misinterpreting my book all the time, and that's wonderful. Here in Israel, there's over 50,000 copies out,
Wow.
and well, I'm just, I'm tickled pink or tickled blue in Emily's case, that a lot of kids and parents are reading the story and loving it, and each one in their own way. And they talk about the death of the author. This is this article from 1950s, but authors do die when their manuscripts come out. I had to relinquish my story to an illustrator whom I didn't know, to give illustrations I didn't predict but loved. I had to give the manuscript to the editor, and then you give the manuscripts to the people and to the librarians and to the critics and to the teachers. And every time this happens, you do die in a sense.
Yeah.
But this enables you to be reborn. So Emily has it's been a rebirth for me. If somebody says to me, "Oh, this door reminded me of something that happened when I was in Tennessee and I was 7 years old," I say, "Okay, that's wonderful. Tell me more."
Hmm. So many stories. And that's a really great segue into, as you are being reborn, what's coming next? Do you have another project in the works? Are you ready to put something else out into the world?
Well, now that I've decided to be a full-time children's author, I'm writing incessantly. The next book that I have coming out in the United States, it's been announced, so I can talk about it. It's a book which melds my scientific career with my nonsense writing, and it's called "Hey, We're Being Discovered. Bacteria Tell Their Story If They Only Could." And it's about the day back in 1676 where Antony van Leeuwenhoek first saw bacteria in his microscope and described them properly. But in my story, along with the scientific matter, there's a lot of crosstalk between the bacteria in the pickle jar, in the yogurt, in the poop, all arguing about who deserves to be discovered first.
That's really
It,
fun.
it's I just had so much fun writing it. It's being illustrated by Tali G and the editor Sarah Rocket. It's coming out with Tilbury next fall, and I'm just as excited as I was with Emily.
Oh, wonderful. And that it's such a different kind of story too, that you have more of a nonfiction side of things than the pure fiction that Emily is.
So we talked about this a little bit. Librarians have to they have to categorize books, because there's shelf for nonfiction, shelf for fiction, shelf for this, shelf for voices, shelf for. But I don't think writers need to categorize their own books. And this one doesn't have a category because it is scientific, but bacteria don't really speak, and they don't really, you know, they're not cranky, and I don't know where it fits. Maybe it's like historical, fictional, non-fictional, or whatever.
Yes. Well, it has a little blend of both, and I think that that is really nice too, because then when readers start learning more about bacteria, then they can say, I read this really cool book when I was in kindergarten, and
Yeah.
I have some
And
background in this now.
I just hope they won't think that bacteria actually speak. They
Okay.
don't speak.
I'm sure that will get to that too.
I hope
Mel, I've
so.
asked you a lot of questions today, but is there something that I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
Oh, I don't know. I thought about that. The only question that I thought you might ask me was, like how it compares with my serious scientific career. And yesterday I looked over a bunch of the scientific articles I wrote after 30 years, and it was like, is that me? Was I really a scientist? Did I really do that? Did I really think that I could discover the truth being a microbiologist? Um, and so about 2 years ago, Mary, I was in a conference of children's book writers, which is quite different than a conference of scientists, even though there are egos involved in both. And an important editor said that for a children's book to work, she meant fiction, it has to be true. The story, it has to tell a true story. And I wrote this down incredibly in my notebook, and I went over to see her and I said, did you hear what you actually said? You said that for a picture book to be good, a fictional one, the story has to be true. And she says, yes. And this led me on a kind of a goose chase in thinking, when you create a story that does have its own world, um, there is a certain truth. There is a certain, Emily is not a real character in the sense of somebody who walks down the street, but she is a real fictional character. I mean, she's not Alice in Wonderland, but if you talk to kids, Alice in Wonderland is a real she's a real character. She goes to a tea party and not a whiskey party, and she meets the Mad Hatter and not the Mad Baker. So this being able to tell a story that has some kind of a truth that you create, not one that you search for, is extremely liberating. It's lots of fun. I never had this much fun as a scientist.
That's really fascinating. I never thought about it like that, but it makes sense that if you're writing something true, even if it's a fictional story, it's going to resonate better with readers than something else.
Well, when you're writing fiction, I mean, you're supposed to write anything except what is true, but you're basing it on everything that you experience in your world.
Hmm.
So to that extent, you're if it's based on your own true experiences, your own true thoughts, the story is going to ring true.
Hmm.
And I think that is when fiction works.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that your true feelings are really the part of it that readers are going to pick up on. Hmm.
Yeah, and if there's some faults in it, or if you're creating this world and all of a sudden an alien spaceship comes in out of nowhere, and you know, like if an alien appeared and Emily saw a door, it wouldn't work because it's some kind of Deus ex machina. It's like, what are you doing in this story about a girl who goes from door to door? The story itself is, there's no city named, and we don't really know how Emily got there, and but that's the truth of the story. That's the real framework of Emily Salvador.
Maybe you could write a sequel where she finds the door to an alien spaceship.
So I'm working on a sequel that is kind of, funnily enough, where Emily is in outer space. But there's a danger with sequels because usually they are inferior to the original book.
Mm,
And unless I find that I can write an equivalent story, uh, Emily will have no sequel. She'll just have the world of this book, and
that
and
makes
maybe
sense.
that would be enough also.
Yeah. Well, exploring it is fun, and I think being able to determine whether or not that's a good fit is also important. Yeah. Mel, where can folks go to find out more about you and your books and what's coming next?
Well, they can. I have a website, authormel.com, which has my email. They can write to me. They can read about me. Just Google my name.
Excellent. Well, good. Everyone can find you in the place that they like best. And listeners and viewers, if Emily Saw a Door sounds like a great fit for you or for someone you know, I hope you look for it wherever you get your books. And thank you so much, Mel, for joining me today. It's been a pleasure getting to talk to you.
Mary, it's always a pleasure.